everybody, it's Allison, www.stlprostretch.com. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already. Today's topic is about problem solving. A while back I gave you a video on how to do the X and the T problem solving with some diagrams, and I thought maybe I'd do a video so that some of that might make a little more sense practically. Always remember, don't work through pain. Work within your range of motion. Please don't tug at the muscle. And also, we're always moving and we're always resisting with all of these stretches. So we're talking resistance stretching today. So get your resistance stretching hat on. All right, we're going to come to the mat and we're going to start with the hip flexor stretch, which is usually what I like to start with for the T quadrant because it's usually the tightest. So let's come to the mat. And you've seen me demonstrate this stretch so many times, I cannot even tell you. So we're going to kneel on one knee and bring the opposite foot forward. See, I've got something underneath my knee so that there's not so much pressure. If you need more, grab a bolster, grab a block, grab anything you need. Okay, so I'm going to imagine my back knee pulling in toward my chest, like bringing me into a fetal position. As I pull that knee forward, I'm going to feel my front foot pulling back to create almost a scissoring action with my legs. That's what I want. We want to have the contraction going before we go into the stretch. So I'm pulling my inner thighs together. My back knee is pulling forward. My front foot is pulling back. I'm going to do the opposite of sticking my butt out. This may be a stretch for you already. But as we continue, I'm going to keep that contraction going as I shift forward and back. And I'm not using a big range of motion right now, but I could. I want you to make sure that you're not leaning forward into the stretch. So if that means that it's only a couple of inches, then it's only a couple of inches. Just work within the range of motion that you have. So as we work through this, maybe 8 to 10 reps, maybe even more than that. You should start to feel your hip flexor getting a little fatigued and also getting stretched. Now, what happens if the hamstring in the back wants to lock up while I'm in this stretch? Well, then we've got to stretch the hamstring. Usually it's the central hamstring, the semitendinosus, that is going to cramp up on us as we go forward into this stretch. So if that happens, hamstring always wins. You've got to stretch that hamstring out. So we're going to come to the balancing stretch, which would be the central hamstring stretch. And I'm stretching it this way because it's just kind of the opposite of the hip flexor stretch, which to me just seems a little bit easier than having to come into on my back lying down. So I'm going to bring that left knee forward and I'm going to pull the heel in toward me. So the heel is pulling in toward me. This is like a hamstring curl at the gym, pulling it towards me. And then I'm going to keep pulling it towards me as I back up. And we just want to back up to the point where we start to feel a stretch. And then we're going to contract again, pull forward, keep contracting, and pull back. So I've gotten through about 3 reps. We want to do between 8 to 12. So maybe more. Maybe the hamstring's really tight and we need to loosen it up. And again, if you feel pain here, then stop and we'll have to move on to some other problem solving. But this is pretty much the basic problem solving. Usually 90% of the time you dress that muscle on the opposite side and you can get into the first stretch that we were doing. So once we've loosened up this hamstring, then we're going to come right back to our original stretch, which was the hip flexor stretch. So imagine that back knee pulling forward, front foot pulling back, the opposite of sticking the butt out, and try it again. And usually, if you had the cramping in the back, it should be gone by now. If it's not, go back and forth and see if you can get them loosened up. All right, so if that doesn't work, and in my experience, Usually if we're having trouble stretching the hip flexor may be overly tight, jammed up, and hamstring's not the answer to fixing that. Usually it's the abductors. So to stretch the abductors, we need to do a figure 4 stretch, either that being on your back or standing up. I'm going to demonstrate on my back first, just because of the way the camera's set up. That way my head doesn't get cut off. But I do prefer the standing figure 4 stretch. It's also great if you're a runner. You can do it in the park and you don't have to lie down in the grass. So I'm going to lie down on my back. I'm going to cross that left ankle over the right knee, and I'm going to lift. Take your left hand, put it through the hole around the back of your right thigh, interlace your fingers, and now here comes the resistance portion, because a lot of people just take this stretch as it is, as a passive stretch. We're going to add resistance and motion. So I'm going to take this left ankle, I'm going to push it out the whole time I'm stretching. So the left ankle is pushing into that right knee. If I didn't have my hands there, everything would go down. So I'm holding my hands there. My upper body is going to be the resistance, the counterweight for this stretch. So I'm pushing my left ankle into the right thigh. Push, 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 push. The upper body just comes along for the ride. Keep pushing the ankle into the thigh, and then I'm going to let my arms win. So I'm still pushing out with my left ankle. I'm going to pull back with my arms and then pull the knees in toward the chest. So it's back and forth. This is not an abdominal exercise. This is a hip stretch. So we're going to get into the glutes, glute maximus, a little bit of glute medius, a little bit of piriformis, a little bit of TFL. So we would just work back and forth until those abductors get warmed up and stretched out. And once you've done that, then come back to your kneeling hip flexor stretch and see if you've solved the problem. So we're back to the kneeling hip flexor stretch. Check it out. See how it feels. Maybe you're not getting gook happening here or jamming happening in the side of the hip. If you still are, that might mean that you need to go, so the abductors are over here, you need to go to the adductors. And my favorite way to do the adductor stretch is, wait a minute, let me grab my socks. I'm going to put my socks on, grab some blocks or a chair. If you have carpet, you might need to get some gliders out or really slippery shoes. I'm going to grab my blocks. Again, you can do this with a chair in front of you. It makes it a little bit easier. You don't have to lean over so far. So I'm going to come right up. I'm going to open my feet, let them slide open until I start to feel a stretch. I'm going to not go down as far as I can, but I'm going to make sure that I go down far enough that I can still pull myself back together again. So it's out and in, out and in. Great thing about this one is you can do both legs at the same time. And if this stretch is not working for you, if there is no possible way that you're going to get into this, then you can do the alternate one, which is on your back. I've got my feet up in the air. You can bend your knees if you're not flexible enough. Open the feet. Push out with the hands, and in with the feet. The whole time you're pushing out with the hands, just letting your legs win, and then your arms win. So that's an alternate for the adductor stretch. So if you get to this point out here and you're feeling your abductors, your hips jam up, for problem solving, that means you've got to go back and stretch your abductors again. You've got to stretch the hips out. and then come back to the kneeling hip flexor stretch and the hamstring again. So that is, my friends, your basic problem solving for the T quadrant. I hope that made sense to you. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments section, and I will do my best to answer them. Happy stretching, everybody. Have a great day. www.stlprostretch.com. Thanks.